Alright, so today we're talking about minimal product photography. We're going to go over what you need, what settings you should be using, how to edit the photos, and a few other tips. Before we get started, my name is Justin, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything to do with photography and lifestyle, so if that's the kind of content you enjoy, consider subscribing. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing you're going to need is some sort of background. I'm going to be using a black cloth. I got it from one of those kits that you get one of those big green screens from. Usually it comes with a green screen, a white backdrop, as well as a black backdrop, so that's what I'm going to be using. If you don't have that, you can go to your local dollar store, pick up some foam core or some poster board, some black poster board, and that'll work too. And if you don't have any of that, just using a black desk will do the job. Alright, let's talk about lenses. If you're trying to get the most beautiful product shots and you want that crisp, nice image, what you're going to want is a macro lens. Something like a 90mm macro is going to give you the absolute best, most crisp looking photos. Now, if that is out of your price range, like for me, and you don't own a 90mm macro or something like that, 100mm macro if you're on Canon, what you're going to want to use is just something basic like a nifty 50. A 50mm 1.8 is alright. What I have is a Sigma 56mm 1.4. So for the purposes of this video, that's going to be good enough. Or if you have something like an 85mm 1.8, that's also going to work really well. Basically any prime lens that can go to f1.8, f2, f1.4, something like that, that's going to be good enough. If you only have a zoom lens, make sure it's something that you can stop down quite a bit, so something like a 24 to 70 2.8, or even just a 24 to 70 f4, something like that will work as well. Now, if you're a beginner and you only have a kit lens, don't worry too much. Just try to practice with the kit lens that you have, something like the 18-55 if you have a Canon, or something like the 16-50 if you're on Sony. Practice with what you have. Alright, so one of the most important things when it comes to product photography is lighting. Depending on the kind of product you're shooting or the kind of product photography you're doing, you're going to need different kinds of lighting. Today I'm going to be doing more of a dark and moody, minimal kind of look, so I'm only going to use one light, and one light's probably going to be good enough for you as well. Make sure the light you do have though is very soft. I'm going to be using a basic softbox so you get that nice smooth and even light. You don't want something so harsh because you don't want to create really harsh reflections or really harsh shadows from your product. And in terms of props or texture or anything else to do with the background or kind of the aesthetic of the photo, that's going to be up to you. Because I'm doing more of a minimalist style and you clicked on this video for a minimal style product photography, then we're just going to keep it nice and clean, just have the black background and the product in the frame. Alright, so now that we have all that covered, let's take a quick peek at the setup I'm going to be using. Basically, once again, I got the black cloth out here and then the softbox light. We're going to keep this above the product and we're going to have it angled at a 45-degree angle to kind of give it that nice soft tone look and make sure that there's not any harsh shadows. I also have a few of the products I'm going to be shooting, and then of course my camera. I'm going to be using my Sony a6400 with the 56mm 1.4 lens. Alright, so let's talk about a few tips that you're going to want to know before starting to shoot. First off, make sure you're shooting at different angles. You don't want the same basic boring shot of the product. You also don't want just one overhead shot, or you don't want one sideways shot. Shooting at different angles allows you to get different aspects of the product, and it just kind of creates a more dynamic portfolio of work. You also want to make sure you're getting all the details of the product, especially if you're doing client work, so getting different angles is very, very important. For my shots in particular, I like to shoot more from the side, kind of at an angle, and then looking down 45 degrees. That gives you a nice, almost overhead shot, but then kind of gives you the side profile of the product as well. That's kind of my favorite look, especially if you're just going to have one photo to showcase the item. Alright, so tip number 2 is do not use a shallow depth of field. It's very, very tempting to stop down your lens, especially if it's something like an f1.4. You're going to want to stop that down to f1.4 and get that crazy shallow depth of field kind of look. It's very tempting, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, and the reason being is because you want all of your product, if not most of it, in focus. So let's take a look at this shot I took at f1.4, and you can see just a little bit of the product is in focus. It kind of looks nice from a distance, but as soon as you zoom in, it kind of looks like it's blurry and out of focus, when really the focus point is only on one part and the depth of field is just way too shallow. Whereas if you take a look at this f4 image, you can see here that most of the product is in focus, and it's going to look a lot sharper and just overall, even from a distance, it'll look much better, and when you zoom in, it's going to look much clearer and more crisp. Having half of your product out of focus is just not visually appealing whatsoever, so make sure that you're using a higher aperture like f4 so that you get everything in focus, or most of it at least. Alright, so tip number 3 is use a tripod and or a high shutter speed. Please. If you have a tripod, use it when you can, because it's just going to make sure that your images come out a lot sharper. Your images are not going to be blurry because of handheld shake, and if you're using manual focus, it's going to be way easier using manual focus on a tripod rather than trying to shoot handheld and use manual focus. On the other hand, if you're like me and you absolutely hate using a tripod and you try not to use it as often as possible, make sure you hike up that shutter speed, because the higher your shutter speed, the less chance of you getting a blurry image is going to be. The last thing you want is your image to turn out blurry because of some handheld shake and your shutter speed was at 1/60th of a second. So make sure you hike up that shutter speed so that everything is sharp. All right, now that we've gotten all the technical stuff out of the way, let's take a couple shots. Not those kind of shots. We're not trying to get drunk here, all right? We're just a couple of these shots. All right, let's go. Now let's talk about editing. Because we're going for a darker, minimal kind of look, there's not going to be too much to edit with these photos, so it kind of makes our job a little bit easier, especially considering that I didn't use products that were very colorful, so it's going to be pretty easy to edit these. Just for the sake of time, I'm just going to edit one of these photos for you guys so you can get the general idea of the process that I go through when editing a dark and minimal kind of look to these photos, but otherwise I'll throw some of the final images up on the screen later on. But yeah, let's get into the editing. Alright, so to edit these photos, I'm going to be using my MacBook Air. This is the M1 edition from 2020. It's crazy how powerful these things are. Even with no fan, and this is the base spec, it can still run Lightroom like no problem, whereas my old 2017 MacBook Pro, the fans would spin up after using it for 5 minutes. So yeah, anyway, let's get into editing this photo right here. So as you can see, this is the photo that I took of the Apple Watch. I also got a different angle over here. This one's much darker straight out of the camera, but that's okay. So we're gonna just go through the editing of this photo because I think it's a better example. This one starts off really dark, so just gonna show what it's like to edit something that's a bit too bright. So yeah, first things first is I'm gonna bring the exposure a little down, probably just, yeah, negative 0.35 right there. Looks about all right. I always like to start with the basic tab right here. I think that's, I don't know, it just makes the whole thing a bit easier. I'm also going to add a little bit of contrast. Personally, it's just the look I like. Now, as you can see here in the watch face, it's very orangey kind of looking, and that can be because of the white balance. So I'm just going to turn the temperature down so that it's a bit cooler of an image. So you can see right away, before and after already, it's a bit darker and it gets rid of that orange tint. You can even maybe drag that down a little bit more, but you don't want it looking icy cold. But here, let's just reset that. So I'm gonna bring that down, yeah, pretty much there. I think that looks all right, personally. All right, so then also right here, I was mentioning reflections before a lot, and saying that you don't want your light reflecting on the product a lot of the time. However, in this case, I specifically made sure that I was shooting at an angle that gave me that kind of, this little look right here, this kind of gloss on here. I think it just adds an extra element and a little bit of depth to the photo, and just puts a little emphasis on the watch itself, you know? So it's nice that it's that bright, but at the same time, just a tad too bright. So I'm gonna bring down the highlights just a little bit, as well as the whites, just a tad. And then on top of that, I'm gonna bring down the blacks because once again, I want this image to look a little darker. All right. And then some photographers don't like adding a lot of clarity to their images, but personally, I like adding just a tad. I think it makes it look a little, I don't know, more crisp, a little sharp, kind of nice. I'm also gonna take the saturation and bring this down just a tad. And maybe go back to the temperature slider over here, make it a tad more cool. All right, so we're basically done with the basic tab over here. And then the tone curve, I like to mess with this a little bit. A lot of the time with the images that I take, I like to add a little bit of an S curve. So just bring that up there. Bring this a little down there, not too dark. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of a fade. Just makes the image look a bit more clean, personally, in my humble opinion. And then, yeah, we don't have very much color in this image, obviously, so I'm not going to do too much here. However, might not be noticeable, but to me at least, I see just a tiny bit of what is almost red-ish. So I'm going to take the saturation and bring it down a little bit, so it just gets rid of that little bit there. Just a little pet peeve. It's nothing, it's not that big a deal. Otherwise, I think this image already, you can see the before and after right here. Before and after looks very clean, very minimal. And yeah, I think it's good. Just straight up a few little things here. I know there's a million other things you could do to the image, but I think just to keep it simple, to keep it basic, just a few settings adjusted is nice. Also, if there's little specks like this of dust on your product, I'm going to take the healing brush and just, take this out right there. Spot removal, just a little bit. Gets rid of some of these little bits right there. Undo that last one. That one doesn't look too good. Yeah, if you're a bit more careful with this, of course, you can get all these little spots out, but even down here, so you can see even just from afar, these tiny two little bits and pieces. Take the heal brush once again, and boom, done, masked out. And there we go. I think that's a pretty decent image, just for something clean and minimal. And yeah, so if you want to see a few more of the photos that I took, you can check out my Instagram. It's in the description down below. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like. It helps grow this channel and build the community that we're trying to build on here. We're at about 1,700 subscribers as of filming this video, which is mind-boggling to me, but we can always grow bigger, grow better. Just try to build a supportive community, everything to do with photography and lifestyle. So yeah, if that's the kind of stuff you enjoy, make sure to subscribe. Appreciate the time. I hope this all helped you out. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. As always, peace, guys. See ya.